Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a podcast by Practical E-Commerce.
What is going on, Internet? Eric Van Holz back again with another E-Commerce Conversations. Hope all is going well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the Internet from me, Drew. Welcome.
How are you doing, Eric? Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Doing well. Excited for this chat. Feel like we're, I don't know, in the world of products, like I feel like you guys sell essentially the same product as us, but a completely different market and audience and style and everything like that. You are the COO of Mad Rabbit. Why don't you give our listeners a quick rundown of what you guys do?
Yes. So Mad Rabbit is, we're the first really tattoo skincare company going direct to consumer on the internet. So the whole idea here is kind of centered around the fact that the products that are made by the big companies like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, et cetera, they're formulated for the masses, and they generally contain a lot of ingredients that are pretty harmful for tattooed skin and ink in particular. So really what Mad Rabbit is doing here is fleshing out a whole suite of skincare products that are really optimized for the tattooed community and are aimed to helping people's ink, stay as vibrant and as fresh for as long as possible.
Now I look at you and I don't see any neck tattoos or arm tattoos. Are you?
No face tats yet. Mine are not visible. So if you look at Oliver Salam, one of our co-founders, they're racking them up, but I'm a little bit behind. So I got one on my leg is where I'm at right now. Planning the next one, I might go a little bit more bold, might do it on the arm or something, but I'm the straggler for sure.
Yeah, you guys, not one to judge people based on your age, but the three of y'all don't look very old.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, right? Is like we're all 25 now. We're all fairly young, so it's kind of hard. The younger you are, the less time you have to get tattoos and stuff. And graduated college only a couple of years ago, so we're very early on in our tattoo journeys, I would say, which is kind of where our customer falls into play too, though. Interestingly enough, right? Like a lot of them are like 25 years old, 30 years old, only have a couple of tattoos, but once you get one, it's kind of addicting and people generally tend to get more than one. So we're kind of like in line with our general consumer too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. So you guys you're only 25 years old. You met in college, right?
Correct. Yeah. We went to Miami, Ohio.
Okay. Is it the Buckeye State? Can you call them Buckeyes without going to like?
Is Ohio Buckeye State? You think I would know that? Maybe it is. I don't know. Ohio State is the Buckeyes, obviously, but.
Right. Anyways. So like, I assume this is your first job out of college?
No. So actually, Mad Rabbit, we started in 2019, which is the same year that the three of us graduated. So we started in January, graduated in May. And when we graduated, we all had full-time jobs for about 2 years after. So we've really only been like full-time on the business for the last 14 months, maybe. So we really grew it as a side hustle for the first, 2.25 years, which was, it was almost like we didn't really have a choice but to kind of go full-time on it, right? Like we went from like 0 to 3 million with like one product, like one channel, one advertising channel. And at that point, January or February of 21, we were kind of like, okay, like this is probably something worth, going all in on. And so we've really only been full-time on this one for, not even a year and a half, really.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, like, how do you grow a $3 million company as a side hustle? Like, I don't even comprehend how someone could do that.
Yeah. So two things. You have to have Salam on your team. So he was the guy in the sticks, really just running Instagram ads. All we ever really did was Instagram ads. Like our first Google ad was 2021. Like our first Amazon sale was 2021. So Salam did an incredible job of kind of, scaling the Facebook ads account. But ultimately, Eric, what I think it comes down to is just giving the market something that it wants that really didn't exist prior, at least not in a super accessible way. Because, you go from 0 to 3 million in 2 years, and it's, I guess, like, we can't give ourselves too much credit, right? Like, I think it was just a really strong need in the marketplace, and that was reflected in the scale, and it is still reflected in, the growth of the company today.
Yeah. I assume that kind of growth, part of the reason it's a side hustle for so long is you're putting every dollar back into the business in terms of buying inventory and, like how did you make the cash flows for that kind of rapid growth work?
Yeah. So, kind of on the same vein as like we were giving the market something that it didn't have before, like just the nature of the Facebook auction system worked in our favor quite well. And so the business, so we were bootstrapped for those, first years, obviously, and we were profitable. So we actually, had positive cash flow for the first 2 months. And then, since then we've gone into investment mode, right? And, we took on outside money and we're, building products, developing products, launching different channels, all that stuff. So it's not the case anymore. Like you obviously don't raise money to, not invest it. But we were cash flow positive for the first 2 years. And then once we saw like the real opportunity and like where we thought we could actually take this thing is when we decided to kind of go into hyper growth mode and like take outside equity and actually kind of invest it there. But that said, like it's not like we always avoided, any sort of working capital crunch. Really, it was credit cards was kind of like the way that we did working capital. And you pay all kinds of fees on that, but it honestly worked pretty well. Like we kept inventory super lean. Obviously on a Shopify store, like you don't really have a ton of POs that are outstanding for too long. And if you can just turn over inventory really quickly, the cash cycle actually works pretty nice in these businesses. So that was the way that we did it for the first 2.5 years.
Yeah, I mean, did you have to go through like multiple contract manufacturers during that time period? Or are you guys making this stuff yourself or?
So we've been using the same contract manufacturer since I think like May of 2019, maybe. Oliver and Salam like literally used to cook it in their like college apartments. And one of my favorite stories is like those guys got banned from the Oxford, Ohio post office because they were sending too many packages. But so yeah, like once you get past like the dorm room stage, right, you professionalize it by finding a co-man. And we're with primarily the same manufacturer that we have been since then. He's done a really good job of scaling with us over time because at this point we're his largest client.
Yeah, I feel like that's always kind of the Goldilocks situation. When you start off with a new contract manufacturer, you might be too small. And then you might be too big, or vice versa, really trying to find one where they can keep up with you or you're big enough that they actually give a damn about you guys.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the point. Like you have to find somebody that's kind of willing to bet on you, right? Like I remember like, before Mad Rabbit, like I was, doing other experiments with branding and stuff. And like most of these people like won't work with you if you're not going to place a 10,000 unit sort of MOQ, right off the bat. So, like his name's Marco. We give Marco a ton of credit for, taking a gamble on us, and it's, appeared to pay off for him.
Yeah. So I still want to go back to like, kind of like the decision that you made to go from a profitable bootstrap company. Was it just the three of y'all at that time, or had you built your team even bigger?
We had 3 until probably about a year ago. And now we're up to like 10. So yeah, it was just us 3 at that time.
Okay. So obviously you see the opportunity, a lot more products, like you've got sunscreens now.
Mm-hmm.
Walk me through what the conversations look like for you guys kind of deciding to make that transition from, what we would generally call a lifestyle business to a hyper growth business.
Yeah. So, I mean, you do have to keep in mind that like we were profitable without the salary expense of 3 employees, right? So like, I haven't gone back and done the math, but we probably would have been unprofitable had you had to actually pay 3 people a living wage. But really, the thought process was like, okay, I think it was like basically, end of 2020. We had just gotten the Shark Tank filming done, 2 months before that. Still didn't know if it was going to air, obviously, as you're familiar with. But so like, we had done a deal with Mark Cuban, and this was still going through at the time. So it was like a $500,000 deal, right? And then we flipped into 2021, like we launched our soothing gel that January that, did pretty well right off the bat. And then we launched a sunscreen in March, which like actually went berserk, like, tens of thousands of units in a matter of weeks. And I think it was at that point when we were kind of like, okay, like this is actually probably a pretty special opportunity. And like, we have 2 options here. Number one, we can kind of keep coasting. The brand might still scale pretty well, and we might be able to pull some dollars out of it. Make ourselves a little bit of money, basically in the form of like dividend or something. Or we can basically pursue the ultimate, sort of what we think this can become, right? And like what we think that we're really doing here is building the brand that is like the ultimate authority in tattoos, and it goes way beyond just skincare for us, right? Like a lot of the money that we raise, at least from here on out, will go towards a lot of different services. So like, we'll continue to build out our skincare line, but the tattooed market is grossly overlooked in a lot of different ways, and skincare is only one of them. So like, like to your point, like, yeah, you can either have like a really sort of nice lifestyle, profitable online business that you take money out of, or, if you think you can basically create, an industry leading brand, that becomes expensive, right? Like building a brand is expensive. It requires plenty of investment. And I think we basically quit our jobs and we're just kind of like, we think there's something really, really special here. Like we really think that this is, a unique opportunity. And so we basically decided to blitz after it, right? Because at the end of the day, like we actually face very little competition, like still to this day, like surprisingly, but like at the end of the day, somebody could launch, a similar brand, right? And it's not like these products are like rocket science. Like, you can reverse engineer skincare products, right? Like they're not patented. It's like software. Like you don't really patent software. So I think we basically, all in all kind of decided like, hey, we think there's an opportunity for a brand in this space and we want to invest in being that brand.
Did you close the deal with Cuban?
The deal with Mark did close. He's actually our largest investor now. So he's participated in subsequent rounds of financing as well, in addition to his Shark Tank note.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool. Like you always hear about a lot of those deals falling apart after the filming's done.
Yeah, apparently like 4 out of 5 of them don't go through, which I was a little bit shocked to learn. But I mean, his team's been great. He's been great. Did he get a good deal on Shark Tank? Like, yeah, probably too good of a deal, but I guess that's what you get for being Mark Cuban.
Now, you started fundraising, you said, at the end of 2020?
We closed our seed round about a year ago. So we probably launched in like March maybe, or February even, and closed it by this time last year. So that was our seed round, technically.
I feel like that was probably like the peak. Was it like the peak timing of the marketplace for money being thrown around?
If it wasn't then, it was around then, for sure. I mean, maybe a little bit later when you saw like all those crazy freaking 400 times multiples on those software companies and stuff. I mean, we've actually always raised on fairly modest valuations. I mean, it's really our opinion that like the worst case scenario for like raising like an absurd valuation is actually like a pretty bad scenario. Like if you don't grow into your valuations, like your common stock will just get marked down to zero, right? Because all the investors have preferred with all the minority rights. And like, if you try to raise some crazy price and you don't live up to it, like you're basically just shooting yourself in the foot. So we generally raise like, in that sort of 3 to 5 times sales range. Like it's nothing crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I still feel like, typically valuations for e-commerce when you're selling are 3 to 5x profit versus top line revenue. So where did you get the guidance for setting valuation and working through these deals as, like relatively new entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So, I think ultimately like it comes down to like whoever's going to lead your financing, who will set their price. At the same time, like obviously like you can look at the comps in the market, right? Like my background was e-commerce equity research. And so I spent a lot of time, working out valuation methodologies around, granted, these were public companies. Like I covered like Wayfair or Carvana, et cetera. They're at a different kind of scale and deserve a different kind of multiple. But generally speaking, I mean, skincare, beauty, right? Like these are really strong margin companies. And so if you're displaying a certain level of growth, call it triple digit growth for more than a couple of years in a row, investors, in my experience, are generally comfortable, underwriting valuations, anywhere from 3 to 8 times. So really, I think the first valuation that we took on was really a conversation with our seed round lead. And he was kind of like, sure, that sounds good. And we were like, okay, cool.
And then I assume like the goal is to exit to a strategic buyer.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think, we'll scale Mad Rabbit to a certain point. Then ultimately, if you want to continue to bring value to your community, beyond a certain scope of what you can accomplish by yourself, like partnering with, a strategic, player in the space is really what unlocks that sort of next level of scale. For instance, like if you ever want to go international, right? Like that's a huge challenge. And like, if we were to get to the point where, somebody like Procter and Gamble or, a player like that was like, hey, we want to help you guys do that. That's, what we would do. Like to the more, pointed answer is like, yeah, you took on venture capital, like there's an exit that's expected.
So if I was a gambling man, I would assume that most of your customers are actually women, despite, probably the surface level feeling that they're dudes. Am I correct? Are you pretty much selling to women?
So it's a good gamble and you're right, but it's about 55-45.
Okay.
So it actually used to be more men 2 years ago. But as we launched more products, it actually became more women because, as you appear to know, women obviously buy more skincare products. And so, like, it's, we always caveat that with the fact that, like, to be like a skincare brand and have almost half of your customers being male, even if it's like less male, like that's tremendously male skewed, right? But at the end of the day, like, yeah, technically it is actually more women.
How do you guys leverage that from like a marketing perspective? Like, are you kind of like female led photography and, like obviously your branding's very masculine, in my opinion, like the black and the white.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is masculine. We're actually going through like a brand refresh right now where we're going to do a lot more like white packaging, a little bit more neutral, right? So like you can see the stuff behind me, like it'll be a lot more just like white in the mix, like white on or black on white, I guess, as opposed to black on or white on black. But so it's another good question. And I think, so it was just the three of us, right, for the first couple of years. Like we weren't doing, any sort of like audience segmentation or like, designing different kinds of flows to go to different kinds of people and like, hey, like this is a flow for women and a flow for men. Like we were never like either A, like we just didn't know that was a thing basically, or B, didn't have time for it. And so I think, as you hire more people, right, like we're up to 10, that becomes something that you can actually do. And then when you think about tattoo culture, more broadly, it's incredibly diverse, right? So like you can literally have like, so like my 18-year-old sister has like 3 tattoos, right? And they're like little flowers just like on her arms or ribs or whatever. So think about somebody like that who has a couple tattoos. Then think about like the Harley Davidson like motorcycle rider who has like tattoos, right? So it's like there's this like incredibly wide spectrum of people who have tattoos. Chefs are related to tattoos, athletes are related to tattoos, bike riders, little girls that like flowers, like stuff like that. So like it's actually an opportunity for us that we haven't probably totally cracked yet is like how do you speak to like each of those segments in an effective way? And like right now we talk to them pretty much all as if they were the same person, honestly. But we're hiring people that A, have the experience and B, the bandwidth to kind of really help us kind of flush that out. As like there's different like purchasing cadences, right? Like maybe like a girl or a female like will buy the balm and then like is more inclined to buy the SPF 2 months later, whereas a man might buy the lotion first and then want to try the body wash kind of thing. So there's so much low hanging fruit for us in that regard, but it is a little bit more challenging, I think, for us just because the spectrum of our customer is so wide.
You mentioned a little bit about building your team out and adding additional manpower. What is your strategy for how you're building your team out?
Yeah, so I would say that at the center of everything that we do, there's 2 objectives, right? Number 1 is building a brand up, and number 2, not in this order, but number 2 is cultivating community. I actually think by cultivating community, you can probably extrapolate that into actually building the brand. So let's say community is really our number 1 priority, and so we think about every time we hire somebody, it's like, hey, like what are we not doing that we should probably be doing? So like, for example, the segmentation / retention / CX kind of function. We didn't have anybody on that until March, or end of March, really, when we brought in one of our directors, Amy, because we were like, hey, like we think that this is the most low-hanging fruit. Like, we see an opportunity here to provide more value to the community if we just had somebody who was trying to figure out what else they want, right? Basically. So it's a number of things, right? Like, so we hired a graphic designer because we were like, we're tired of not really controlling the brand image. If we brought somebody in-house, we could really, get him to feel the brand and exemplify the brand through arts. So Evan, we brought on as our graphic designer pretty recently. Social media manager we brought on because we were like, we're only on Instagram, right? Like we had never really done anything else. I mean, TikTok has gone berserk for us just this year, but before it was literally just Instagram. We were like, hey, like our community is not only on Instagram, right? Like they're on Twitter, they're on Snapchat, they're on Pinterest. Let's hire somebody who can engage with them. And then we actually did just hire like a literal community manager, Noah, like last week, who is actually like more in the trenches, like in our Discord and Facebook VIP group. So pretty much all the people that we're bringing on, honestly, the common denominator between all these hires is just to get our community to really, love Mad Rabbit even more and basically find ways for us to continue to provide value to them in ways that maybe we haven't in the past.
I'm curious, what are your KPIs for your social media manager and community manager?
Yeah, so without getting like too specific, we have like follower growth goals internally, engagement goals internally. Our engagement's actually fairly strong, I think, relative to the benchmark. just given the fact that tattoos are pretty easy to engage around.
What is engagement for you guys? Is it comments? Is it likes? Is it
Comments and likes we would count as engagement.
okay? Are you using any tools to measure that, or are you manually?
We have Sprout Social, and then there is another one that she has. I forget what it's called, but Sprout and something else.
Okay, so there are online tools that just kind of keep track. I assume, are you posting through those platforms as well, or are you posting native? Or
there's like content planning platforms that like she'll use, like I think Planoly or Planful kind of things that are, you can schedule content.
Yeah, and then expectations for posting original content, like one per channel per day. Is that?
I think we would like to get up to that point. I think we do for Instagram, but for TikTok, content has been a little bit harder to come by.
Yeah.
I think we probably just recently on TikTok got there, but I don't know how long we'll sustain that cadence for. But I mean, ideally forever, right? But that is like once per channel per day is definitely like the goal.
And then like, do you feel like they're empowered over like their follower counts and things like that? Like, because I almost feel like, in my opinion, like a creative person, someone who's really good at generating content, isn't the same type of like data oriented, like growth type of person.
No, I mean, in my experience, you're totally right. Like Garen is our content director. And so Garen is really the brains behind everything that you see from a branding perspective with Mad Rabbit. And we basically give him full autonomy, and we try to give him everything that he needs to be creative, because I mean, this is a guy who's incredibly gifted, honestly. Like you can just tell, right? Like the branding for Mad Rabbit's done fairly well. And, it's pretty much all him. I mean, he's been with us, he was the first one to come on, I think, after myself. So he was number 4, and he's just a genius. But I mean, you're right. Like he's definitely not, like a quantitative like growth marketer or anything. He's much more of an artist. So we try to give him as much autonomy as we can, to do what he's good at. And then we try to take it and, do what we're good at, basically. Yeah.
So is the culture like really heavily leaning on these KPIs, or is it more of kind of like guidelines? I always find it interesting from like a COO perspective, like what is the strategy and in the culture and how do you build that up?
Yeah. So I would call them expectations. And, if, goal, I don't think goals is always honestly the best way to describe it. Like you can have a goal, right? But it should be beyond the expectation. So basically like I would say minimum outcome. At the same time though, like, you do have to consider that we're up to 10 people and, 5 of them have started in this year, basically, right? So, it's a pretty small time frame to try to measure people with. But yeah, I mean, like we have like, sort of stretch goals or like this, the STAR goals or whatever. And then like sort of baseline expectations where it's like, hey, like if this doesn't happen, then like we're just doing something wrong.
Do you, with this team growth and, capital influx from investment, is the plan to continue to raise money? Like, are y'all burning more cash than you're making, or is it just kind of helping you elevate to the next stage and you're already at that level?
Yeah, our fundraising journey is not over. We did just do a $4 million round back in January that we have plenty of cash left from. That was mainly supported by insiders. So that was a raise that was supposed to be for 18 months, 24 months. So we're pretty much good on cash right now, I would say. I would caveat that with the fact that there is so much opportunity in the space. And I think, as we continue to prove out Mad Rabbit and as we kind of continue to create this category, capital becomes more and more available to us. So, it's not out of the question to do, some sort of opportunistic raise where, you might be able to get to, from A to C faster than, if you didn't. Because, I mean, to be honest, like back in the day, like when we were raising that seed round, it was like, we had a ton of rejections because everyone's like, what the hell is tattoo care? Like what is that? You have $2 million of trailing revenue behind you. Like this is just a fad, whatever. But then all of a sudden, like, you blow past the 8-figure mark a year or two later, and all of a sudden people are kind of like, okay, like maybe this does actually have legs in a way. So I would say our fundraising journey has gotten significantly easier, honestly. Like obviously as you progress through the later rounds, like there's much more diligence and hurdles and stuff to get through. So we expect that, but we'll probably do like one more single financing before we won't really need to have outside money anymore.
Today a lot of companies are struggling, and there's a lot of kind of talk about an upcoming recession, and of course iOS changes about a year ago, that made a big impact. Has this growth still been through paid social? Is that where you guys are seeing the channels? And, If so, how did you guys react to the changes to the tracking, the privacy changes? And then kind of what are your North Star metrics that allow you to continue to spend money confidently?
Yeah, it's a good topic. I wish I had a better perspective of how other people think about this, but I can obviously tell you how we think about it. So, let's go back to April of 2021, right? At this time, it's still just the three of us. 85%, 90% maybe of our marketing spend is on Instagram, right? Because it was the three of us and Salam just working Instagram ads. So when iOS hit, it was like the train came off the rails, right? It was all of a sudden, your 85% of your marketing is who knows what's happening with it, right? Basically. And so, our sales reflected that, right? Not only the iOS changes, but the supply chain shortages, the Amazon issues, all that. And then, fast forward to 2022, we're actually spending more money now on social than we ever have at better MERs than we ever did. And so I think there was really, I'll say, two massive things that we did here that kind of allowed us to navigate through, what was supposed to be the death of DTC, I guess. So number one, we did an equity for services deal with Inc. Magazine. So for anybody who's not familiar, Inc. Magazine is a digital media publisher. They have about 60 million followers across all of their social media channels. And so what we did was, it's more nuanced than this, but basically their job is to exclusively and aggressively promote our brand, our products, and our content across all their social channels, right? So you're talking about an audience of 60 million people. And all of a sudden what that does is it just explodes the top of your funnel, right? Really opens up the top of your funnel. So that was the first thing we did. That deal closed in December, I think, of 21.
Going back to this deal, how did you find this? Did they reach out to you? And then how do you structure that kind of deal to know that you're getting your money's worth out of it?
Yeah. So it was one of our investors that knew somebody who bought the company that bought the magazine. So they were just friends, and the synergies are fairly obvious, right? And the way that we actually designed the deal was more from a brand perspective as opposed to a revenue driver perspective, because we knew what we were doing here, right? We were just getting eyeballs on the brand. We were opening at the top of the funnel. So the deal was not drive X amount of dollars in revenue in this X amount of time frame or Y amount of time frame. Because at the end of the day, what that would have done, if you wanted to structure a deal like that, you're just pounding this stuff down people's throats. They're going to get annoyed. It's going to be completely saturated. You can't just tell people to buy stuff. What you can do though is integrate a brand natively into another brand that is pretty much, the monopoly of tattoo lifestyle media today. And when people see Mad Rabbit next to Inc. Magazine, it just has a halo effect on all of our other advertising efforts. So we were really focused on getting a certain amount of impressions and a certain amount of exposure through Inc.'s channels, and that's the way that we actually structured the deal. So that was the first thing we did. And the second thing that we did was TikTok, right? So TikTok today it's not our main sales driver, but on the same vein as the Inc. Magazine stuff, we have TikTok videos with over 20 million views. We have 400,000 TikTok followers that we've gained in the last 6 months. Again, a really massive sort of top of funnel effect here. And so now you have TikTok with hundreds of millions of views. You have Inc. Magazine with 60 million people that are all seeing Mad Rabbit, a couple times in their feed. And so when you blow up the top of your funnel like that, what at least in our case, what it has allowed Facebook to do is actually start to work again. And so, we started to scale Facebook again, probably in January, and, we're growing, month over month, every single month this year. And a lot of the actual sales are driven by Facebook. You might ask, how do you know that? And, get into the whole attribution situation. But if you look at our Facebook, in-platform metrics, everything on the in-platform would tell you to turn it off, right? It's you look at the ad sets, the campaigns, the ROAS, it all looks like crap. But when you take one step out, and to your question, so this will get to your question about what's the North Star metric. We really only, at least me, as sort of the budget guy, I'm only really managing to a fully loaded MER, right? So I don't care if you spent this much on Facebook and this much on TikTok, as long as we can manage to a certain actual multiple on advertising, that's what we're concerned about. So what we've actually ended up doing a lot for attribution is I'll literally take every single day of advertising by channel and every single day of sales between Shopify and Amazon, and just do a really simple linear regression in Excel. And what you can basically discern is that Facebook actually is still driving a ton of our sales still. We find that even with Amazon, our Facebook spend will drive a ton of sales to Amazon. Amazon advertising actually has not been that highly correlated to Amazon sales. So, this is a bit of a long answer, but basically we did a couple of things intentionally to blow up the top of the funnel. And then we started to look at attribution in a way that I think, is a bit more holistic than just looking at in-platform metrics and deciding that, the 0.75 that Facebook is telling you it's pulling isn't actually right. And then just kind of looking at it from the P&L perspective, like what was your advertising as a percent of revenue, and just kind of budgeting the whole company to that.
How do you know if one ad performs better than another ad if it's all junk in Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, so there's like Triple Whale is the one that we use for like actual trying to, get more granular for attribution. We look at in-platform stuff still, but like from my perspective, right, like I'm not really in the weeds on the marketing side. Like I'm not launching the campaigns and stuff. So I look at it from like I said, like a fully loaded MER. So like to be honest with you, like it's up to the media buyers to figure out which campaigns are actually working. But as long as we're pulling it all in sort of advertising, percentage of sales is ultimately what, is the annual budget kind of contemplates.
Yeah. Where can people buy your product? Where can they support you? Where can they find you?
So we're trying to get into more places, but we're on Amazon right now. We're on madrabbit.com. We're in a couple hundred Urban Outfitters. And then look out for us, in the actual tattoo parlors coming soon too. We're in a couple hundred of those right now, but really looking to scale up that effort too.
And you're on Twitter, right?
I am on Twitter, Drew Fallon 12, Drew Fallon 12.
Drew Fallon, the 12th Drew Fallon on Twitter.
I know. I wish I was like early enough on Twitter to like get everyone has like the cool, like is yours just like Eric Bandholz?
No, just Bandholz.
Okay, yeah. Like I wish I could have gotten like an OG one of those, but I was late to the game, I guess.
You got a common name too, which doesn't help.
Yeah, doesn't help at all. But
all right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your expertise. It's been really fun to watch you guys blow up over these years. So I'm glad you took a little bit of time to share your story with us.
No, yeah. Thanks for having me. It was great chatting.
This has been another E-Commerce Conversations. Cheers. Keep on growing.